Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This fairy tale is called The Green Mist. It's originally a Scottish fairy tale. There is no date for this one. It's because it's actually quite old and it's been sort of redone in various wordings to make it more up to date. So there's that many out there that's been changed and stuff. So there's no actual date for this one, but it's called The Green Mist and it's traditionally a Scottish folk tale. So you've heard tell of Bogles and all the horrid things of old times. You've heard of the voices of dead folks and hands without arms that came in the darklings, moaning and crying and beckoning all night through. Toddlowers dancing on the tussocks, and witches riding on the black snagged roots that turned to snakes and raced about with them in the water. Aye, they were mischancy, unpleasant sort of bodies to do with, and I'm main glad, as they were all gone before my days. Well, in those times, folk must have been unlike now. Instead of doing their work in the week and smoking their pipes on Sundays in peace and comfort, they were always bothering their heads about something or other, or the church was doing it for them. The priests were always at them without their souls, and what with hell and the boggarts, their minds were never easy. The Bogles were once thought a deal more on, and at darklings every night the folk would bear lights in their hands round their houses, saying words to keep them off, and would smear blood on the doorsill to scare away the horrors, and would put bread and salt on a flat stone set up by the lane side to get good harvest, and would spill water in the four corners of the fields when they wanted rain. And they thought a deal on the sun, for they reckoned as it made the earth and brought the good and ill chances, and I don't know what all. I reckon they made nigh everything as they saw and heard into great Bogles, and they were always giving them things, or saying sort of prayers like, to keep them from doing the folk any evil. Well, that was a long time ago, so there were, so to say, two churches, one with priests and candles and all that, the other just a lot of old ways, kept up all beknown and hidden like, mid the folk themselves, and they thought a deal more of the old spells than that on the churches and the church services in the church itself. But as time went on, the two got sort of mixed up. Some of the folks couldn't have told you if it were for one or the other as they'd done the things. To Yule in the churches, they were grand services with candles and flags and whatnot. And in the cottages, there were candles and cakes and grand doings. But the priest never knowed as many of the folks were only walking the dying year, and that the wine teemed upon the door sill to first cock crow were to bring luck in the new year. And I reckon if some of the folks themselves would do the old heathen ways and sing hymns meantime, with never a thought of the strangeness of it. Still, there were many as kept to old ways altogether, though they did it hidden like. And I'm going to tell you of one family, any grandfather knowed fine, and how they waked the spring one year. As I said before, I can't, even if I would, tell you all the things that they used to do, but there was one time of the year as they particularly went for their spells and prayers, and that was the early spring. They thought as the earth was sleeping all winter, and that the Bogles, call them what you will, had nobbut to do but mischief. If they'd nought to see in the fields, then they were feared on the long dark winter days and nights, in the middle of all sorts of unseen fearsome things, ready and waiting for a chance to play tricks, evil tricks. But as the winter went by, they thought as it were time to wake earth from its sleeping and set the Bogles to work, caring for growing things and bringing the harvest. After that, the church were tired, the earth were tired, and the earth was sinking to sleep again. And they used to sing hushaby songs in the fields of the autumn evens. But in the spring they went. The folk did as believed in the old ways, to every field in turn, and lifted a spud of earth from the moles, and they said strange and queer words, as they couldn't scarce understand themselves. But the same as had been said for hundreds and hundreds of years, and every morning at the first dawn, they stood on their dorsal with salt and bread in their hands, watching and waiting for the green mist as rose from the field and told that the earth were awake again, and the life will come into the trees, plants, and the seeds were bursting with the beginning of spring. Well, there was one family as had done all that, year after year, for as long as they knowed of, just as their grandfathers had done. They had done it before them. And one winter they were making ready for waking the spring. They had had a lot of trouble through the winter. Sickness and what not had been bad in the place, and the daughter, a ramping new maid, was growed white and waffling with a bag of bones, instead of being the prettiest lass in the village, as she had been before. Day after day she grew whiter and sillier, till she couldn't stand upon her feet more than a newborn babby, and she could only lay at the window, watching and watching the winter creep away. "Oh, mother," she keeps saying over and over again, "if I could only wake the spring with you again, maybe the green mist would make me strong and well, like the trees and the flowers and the corns in the fields." And the mother would comfort her like, and promise that she'd come with them again to the waking, and grow as strong and straight as ever. But day after day she got whiter and waner, till she looked like a snowflake fading in the sun. And day after day the winter crept by, and the waking of the spring was almost there. The poor maid watched and waited for the time for going to the fields, and she got so weak and sick that she knew she couldn't get there with the rest. But she wouldn't give up, for all that, and her mother must swear that she would lift the lass to the doorsill at the coming of the green mist, and as she might toss out the bread and salt on the earth itself with her own poor thin hands. And still the days went by, and the folk were going on early morns to lift the spud in the fields, and the coming of the green mist was looked for now, looked for at every single dawn. And one even, the lass had been laying there, her eyes fixed on the little garden, said to her mother, "If the green mist doesn't come in the morn's dawning, I cannot wait for it longer. The moles is calling me, and the seeds is bursting with as will with broom over my head. I know it well, mother, and yet, if I could only see the spring wake once again, mother, I swear I'd ask no more than to live as long as one of those cowslips as come every year by the gate, and to die with the first of them when the summer is in." The mother whispered the maid in fear, for the Bogles and other things they believed in were always gain hand, and could hear aught that was said, as were never safe, never alone. The poor folk to then were the things they couldn't see and couldn't hear all around them. But the dawn of the next day brought the green mist. It came from the moles and happed itself round everything, green as the grass in summer sunshine, the sweet smelling of herbs of the spring, and the lass was carried to the dorsal, where she crumbled the bread and salt to the earth with her own hands, and she hummed the strange old words of welcome into the spring, and she looked to the gate where the cowslips grew, and then she was taken back to her bed by the window, when she slept like a babby, and dreamt of summer and flowers and happiness. Whether it was green mist as done it, I can't tell you, but from the day she grew stronger and prettier ever, and by the time the cowslips were budding, she was running about and laughing like a very sunbeam in the old cottage. But she was always so white and wan. Well, she looked like a will-o'-the-white flitting about, and the cold days she sit shaking over the fire and looked nigh dead. But when the sun came out, she dance and sing in the light, and stretch out her arms to it, as if she lived by the warmness of it. And by the cowslips burst their buds, and came in flower, and the maid was grown so strange and beautiful, but they were nigh feared on her. And every morning she would kneel by the cowslips, and water and tend them, and dance to them in the sunshine, while her mother would stand, begging her to leave them, and cried that she would have them pulled up by their roots, and thrown away. But the lass only looked strange at her and said, soft and low-like, "If you aren't tired of me, mother, never pick one of them flowers. They'll fade of their own selves soon enough, aye, soon enough, you know." And the mother would go back to the cottage and greet over the work. But she never said naught of her trouble to the neighbours, nor till afterwards. But one day a lad of the village stopped at the gate to chat with them, and by, whilst he was gossiping, he picked a cowslip and played with it. The lass didn't see what he had done, but as he said goodbye, he gave it to her, smiling like, and thinking what a pretty maid it was. She looked at the flower, and at the lad, and all round about her, at the green trees, and the sprouting grass, and the yellow blossoms, and up at the golden shining sun itself, and all to once, shrinking as if the light she had loved so much was burning her, she ran into the house without a spoken word, only a sort of cry, like a dumb beast in pain, and the cowslip catched close to her breast. She never spoke again, but lay on the bed, staring at the flower in her hand, and fading as it faded all through the day. And at the dawning there was only lying on the bed a wrinkled, white, shrunken dead thing, with in its hand a shrivelled cowslip. And the mother covered it over with the clothes, and thought of the beautiful joyful maid dancing, like a bird in the sunshine by the golden nodding blooms, only a day gone by. The Bogles had heard her, and given her the wish. She had bloomed with the cowslips, and had faded with the first of them. It's as true as death. So that is the story of the Green Mist. Obviously, it's a lot like the Willow Maid, but again, it has its differences because the Willow Maid lives in an actual tree, and it's nothing to do with a flower, but she does fade into a flower. So, but that one is a Scottish folk tale from back in the day. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening.